Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So today we are going to be covering a pretty large community topic and also a game design topic. We're going to be talking about craftable legendaries. This is something that appeared in this week's build of the patch 7.2 PTR, and as just about everything with legendary items seems to do, it has sparked off quite the discussion. I know Asmongold has weighed in. I'm pretty sure quite a few of us in the YouTuber scene will end up talking about this topic, because legendaries have been a bit of a touchy point throughout this expansion in regards to player feedback. Some people really seem to like them, a lot of other people don't seem to like them, and yeah, generally, it's one of the more controversial game design decisions that Blizzard made with Legion. Now, these are craftable by blacksmiths, tailors, and leather workers. They are pretty damn expensive as far as the resources, and there is also a quest chain. I know it involves like killing Helya, killing Odin. It seems like it's a long enough quest chain to actually unlock the ability to craft them. Now, the items themselves are currently BOP, so it seems like you're crafting them for yourself. However, it's the PTR, and we don't know the specifics of how this system is overall going to be implemented. One thing for sure though is Blizzard have been talking about craftable legendaries for quite a while. Back at last BlizzCon, they mentioned that being a possibility, and they've continually said that, yeah, we'll just have our RNG legendaries at the start, and then maybe we will have more sort of targeted ways of getting them later on. Now, there's a few sort of community concerns and things like that going around. What I want to do first though, before I get into any of the problems and things like that, is I would rather just put forward what I think would be a cool way to do a craftable legendary. So, craftable legendary currently to the WoW team means it's made by somebody with a trade skill, and I think that is cool, I guess, in that it does make those trade skills valuable, and that's a strong fantasy, you know, going and crafting this legendary hammer or whatever. That's okay, but that's kind of just sitting there as a bit of trade skill content. What I think would be a bit cooler is if they made the craftable legendary something that you actually crafted on your character regardless of a trade skill, and that the process of crafting it is basically something that would be a bit like the epic quests that used to be back in the game in level 60. So these would require doing a lot of content, they would require a pretty hefty cost in resources, but it would be something that you as a player could, you could sit down, think, right, there's this legendary, the quest line to get it takes X amount of time, resources, progress, and you can just work away on that. I think that would be a pretty cool way of doing things, because it would give every player a pretty lengthy quest to work on. A bit like how some of the older endgame quests that would normally span a few weeks would kind of operate back in the sort of the older periods of the game. I think that would just be cool. It would give everyone something to do that wasn't tied to a trade skill, that did involve actually earning the item via skill. You see, one of my issues with the legendaries currently, and I guess it's not even an issue, it's the legendaries are bizarre. I could kill Mythic Gul'dan. That's never going to happen, unfortunately, but I could kill Mythic Gul'dan and get the leg thingies of Shaladrisil? Yeah. Basically, they're the legs, which mean that you regen, I think, 3% health per second in the PTR. So I could get that from Mythic Gul'dan, or I could get Best in Slot from a Emissary Cache. So to me, legendary items, they're not really something that are to do with player skill. For me, I just think they're to do with luck, therefore they're not really an element of the game that I find to be particularly interesting. Now, because I'm not trying to, push any crazy mythic progress or anything like that, not having a legendary or, taking ages to get one or getting best in slot ones, they haven't been a big issue to me personally, because I quite simply haven't cared, because it's never an issue, or it's never an element of the game with the legendaries that engaged me in the first place. However, when I look at some other players who, for whom the legendaries are really important, well, it seems like they end up creating a little bit of a barrier to entry to gameplay for those people, because, the big discussion a while ago, and I didn't cover this on the channel, but basically the legendary bad luck protection would work up until your 4th legendary. I even heard about some mythic guilds having people like re-roll characters to use the way that legendary bad luck protection worked to get best in slot legendaries, which seems absolutely bonkers in my head. But overall, I guess my point here is that I don't really like the RNG legendaries, and if they are going to do crafted legendaries, I would rather that it's a new bit of quest content, quest content that involves you doing grouped content with other players, of course, but I'd rather it was something like that you could just go and earn and really have as your own reward, something that I think therefore is a lot more memorable, because you actually earned it rather than you flipped a dice and it just happened to be bestowed upon you by RNGesus. So I guess really that's the crux of what I think about these craftable legendaries. I don't really mind. I could see, and this is something that Asmongold talks about in his video, you know, I could see them being potentially implemented in a pretty damn bad way. Like, I think it would be really, really terrible if these were BOE and therefore you could sell them on the auction house, because then people could be buying the best gear in the game, and yeah, that would just be a bit strange. But on the flip side of things, you know, if you're a jewel gatherer, it would kind of suck if Blizzard made it so that you were forced to re-roll one of your professions, which you've put time and effort into leveling, if you're forced to just re-roll that just to get a legendary. I don't think that would be a good way of doing it either. And I suppose it's a lot of those concerns which lead me to thinking, why not make it just a really epic, long quest that you do in your character so that it's a reward you actually have kind of earned? They're really my thoughts on this issue. Pretty simple overall in my head. And just with the legendaries as well, I guess there's also been a lot of people asking for a way to target legendaries, and I'm really torn about this one. And by target legendaries, people mean, say there's a specific legendary that you want that's in the current pool. Well, right now, tough shit, it's RNG. And if you have more than 4 legendaries, bad luck protection is no longer helping you, so it's going to really feel like it's going to take a long time to get those additional legendaries. Now, if you can target a legendary, so let's just use the thingies of Shaladrasil, because, you know, the lore of that item is tied, as an example, to the Dreamweavers and to the Val'sharah zone. Now, I don't know why you would actually want that item particularly, but let's just say that you could target that by doing content in Val'sharah. Well, then that legendary targeting system is just getting people to rerun the same few dungeons over and over and over again, to redo the same world quests or emissary caches in that zone over and over again, and that's leading to very repetitious, grindy gameplay that isn't particularly fun. Another way of doing, targeting legendaries would just be that you end up with some sort of currency and you can directly buy them. I mean, speaking purely from what I would personally like in the game, first of all, I'd rather these legendaries just didn't exist. That's pretty much been my line since they were announced. So that aside, I wouldn't mind having these be in some sort of currency where I could just go and fucking buy the one that I want after I've earned it by doing the work, because maybe this is an old school thing when it comes to what I enjoy in games, but I like just having a goal that I can work towards, and then I get the goal and I'm happy because I've got the thing that I've earned. This is a really, really bad analogy, but kind of imagine, it being satisfying in real life to, do well at work, earn some money, get a promotion, earn a little bit more money. That's satisfying versus, losing consistently on the lotto or something, which is just throwing your money away when you think about it. That's a terrible analogy, but you get what I mean, right? It's about earning something, and that's kind of my issue with the legendaries. And with targeting legendaries, it's just a tricky situation, because while with the targeting system, it could make it so you could get the one that you really want, it could make that process faster, it might be in a way that causes some really destructive and unhealthy gameplay habits that might hurt the game overall. I'd say primarily, though, I'm just interested in hearing what you guys have got to think about this. With this topic of legendary items, everyone seems to have not everyone has a different opinion, but, there's a lot of different opinions out there, and the more that I read yours and see what everyone generally thinks, the more clued in to the topic that I'll be, because, as I said earlier in this video, it fundamentally just does not interest me. Therefore, it's possible that in some ways I could be out of touch about legendary items. But that's it for me. As I said, let me know what you think, but yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.